channel 264, or you can download www.visiontv.co.uk. App for iOS or Android. You can also see us on Facebook and YouTube for quality content on the go. NTA International, Africa's window to the world.
INEC to sustain online nomination of candidates and party agents even after exit of COVID-19.
Zamfara state government donates to families of victims of armed bandits attack.
Passenger collapsed. Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria appeals to people to respect privacy of any distressed person at airports.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss justice sector in 2021.
Well, no doubt 2021 will go down in the history of the nation's justice sector as a year with a plethora of events in both sides of the coin.
Indeed, Nadabu, but one event that will remain indelible in the sector is perhaps the prolonged strike of the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, that's the JUSUN, over financial autonomy, of course, which lasted for about 2 months or thereabout, paralyzing legal activities in the entire country.
Well, that's on industrial issues, clear. But on adjudication, the year will be remembered for forum shopping, especially on PDP leadership tussle and the Anambra State governorship election, which generated concern about the popular saying that, and I quote, "The judiciary is the last hope of the common man."
And apart from that, the last year, that's 2021, witnessed some legal battles between federal government and the National Association of Resident Doctors. There was also value-added tax controversy, the secessionist agitators cases, and so much more.
On a good note, the year saw the conviction of 2 public officers for corruption-related cases. They are Abdul Rashid Maina, former chairman of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team, and former member of the House of Representatives, Farouk Lawan.
The year also witnessed more collaboration in the fight against corruption, with more funds being recovered, of course, looted funds being recovered by the federal government.
And one thing that's novel here is that during the year was the establishment of virtual courtroom in the Kuje Correctional Center.
But what is still worrisome in the sector, that's the justice sector, is the slow process of justice dispensation in the country. It's a concern which the Vice President, Professor Yame Osinbajo, described as elephant in the room, which needs to be addressed urgently.
And so, what are the major breakthroughs of the justice sector in 2021? What were the major challenges hampering speedy dispensation of justice? How would the key players address the issue of conflicting court orders and other forum shopping, especially that the nation has 2 off-cycle governorship elections to be conducted, coupled with electioneering programs ahead of the 2023 general elections?
All right, these are some pertinent questions, but of course there are so many more we have not talked about. But people are also asking, what should Nigerians expect in the fight against corruption in the new year? and of course beyond. Recovery of looted funds, what should be done, what major reforms are in the offing to enhance speedy dispensation of justice going forward. Are there stiffer penalty disciplinary measures in place to deal with perpetrators of conflicting court orders and of course their accomplices? Well, as I said earlier, these are some of the pertinent questions or issues that of course we intend to raise with our guests today on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And we're looking at the justice sector in 2021 and of course beyond. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. If we haven't seen this year, I use this opportunity to welcome you and to say a Happy New Year to you. Nadabu, I haven't seen you this year.
You've seen me at least we met in the morning before now. And I'm Yusuf Nadabu Usman. I join my colleague Claire to welcome you back from your New Year break. And then welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, the second edition for the year 2022. We are beaming live, as always, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest TV network, a station you can't beat its reach. The NTA. We shall serve our complimentary segments in the course of the program. For now, here is our colleague Tessie Omeri with the morning news highlights. Good morning, Tessie. Happy New Year.
Tessie, you look blossom.
Really?
What did you do with your holidays?
I rested and I had fun and
it
walked.
it is evident.
You know how it is with NC. I walked too. Happy New Year. I'm just seeing you for the first time,
Same to
Claire
you,
and
same to
Nadabu.
you.
Good morning, Nigerians, and here is the morning news. Online nomination of candidates and party agents has come to stay in Nigerian electoral system even after the exit of COVID-19. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu stated this in Abuja.
We will maintain the same arrangement for all forthcoming elections, that the PVCs will be available for collection from 6 January 2022 until 4th February 2022.
Nigeria's ambassador to Spain, Ademola Seriki, says repositioning the country in Europe will remain his priority, as he instills discipline among staff of the mission in line with diplomatic best practice.
The office officers are responsible. They know that you cannot travel 3,000-4,000 miles from Nigeria to here to come and work and not being serious, or flaunting or being in a state of infraction of the laws and order and extant rules, which is the order of the day among the local staffers. And we have changed the scenarios, we have changed the narratives. I myself have not missed office in one day.
The Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, FAN, has appealed to public to respect the privacy of any distressed person at the airport by desisting from just merely watching, recording or broadcast anyone in distress, which usually prevent emergency rescue teams from performing their duties. This is coming on the heels of an Air Peace-bound passenger who collapsed at Abuja Airport, but was immediately revived by FAN official who performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation before the arrival of the medical team, which administered first aid treatment and subsequently evacuated the passenger to the Air Force Base clinic. A statement by FAN General Manager, Corporate Affairs Henrietta Yakubu, urges stakeholders to always be orderly and proactive in the face of emergency situations, as port health official on duty was intimidated and hindered from assisting the sick passenger. Interference, threats, and agitations only undermine the focus on saving lives and further slowing emergency response process. And Zamfara State government has presented 6 million naira cash and 100 bags of rice to the family of a district head and that of 4 other persons who were recently killed by armed bandits at Gada district in Bungudu local government area of the state.
We're here to condole them and to give them some little contributions given by His Excellency the Executive Governor of our state. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them al-Jannah Firdausi, forgive them and have mercy on them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for their families.
The federal government delegation has condoled with the family and people of Kano State over the death of an estate politician, late Alhaji Bashir Othman Tofa. During the condolence visit, Minister of Defense Bashir Salih Magashi expressed President Buhari's shock for the loss.
Mai girma shugaban ƙasa yana jajanta muku, yana baƙin ciki da rashin shi, kuma Allah ya ba ku dangana ku ƴan uwan shi da abokan shi.
We thank the President immensely for the delegation for coming to share with us our grief and our loss for our dear brother.
A new president has emerged for the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria. He is Sheikh Abdul Rashid Hadiyatullah, who until was the vice president of the council. He succeeded the late president of the council, Dr. Ibrahim Datti Ahmed, who died last week. This was announced at a news conference by the Secretary General of the body, Nafiu Baba Ahmed, held in Kano. The secretary says the succession is in line with the constitution of the council. And that's the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues with Nadabo and Claire after this break. Thanks for watching.
The Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
My son has always dreamt of being in the spotlight. That's why I give him Born Vita for everyday vitality that gives him the strength to pursue his dreams. Born Vita, strength to dream.
Are you aware that your perfect family may be under threat by germs? Germs can cause infectious disease. These infectious diseases are amongst the biggest killers of adults and children. Illness-causing germs are everywhere. In unclean bathing water, clothes, dirty surfaces, on cuts and wounds. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capful. In your bathing water, for your laundry, for surface cleaning, for first aid, and to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure.
There are certain moments in the day when I need my me time to just unwind and indulge.
Now available in 30 grams and 450 grams.
The 2022 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration is here again. The Nigeria Armed Forces work tirelessly day and night to give us peace to go about our businesses. Some have paid the supreme price. Should we forget the families and loved ones they left behind? No.
I am therefore privileged to honor these veterans who devoted most of their lives, active lives, to securing the nation and the world at large.
So, let's support the Nigerian Armed Forces and their families, corporate organizations, government agencies, parastatals, and individuals. Let's show our love and support for our armed forces. They are our heroes. Buy the Armed Forces Remembrance Emblem and donate into the Armed Forces Remembrance Emblem Appeal account. We love you, and your labor and sacrifice will not be in vain for spilling your blood for us to live.
From the heart of the Federal Capital Territory
to the ancient city of Kano,
from the sprawling rooftops of Ibadan
to the bustling markets of Aba and the creeks of the Niger Delta, you really can't beat the reach.
Over the years, we have kept going, keeping you informed, educated, and entertained.
And how have we survived in the very challenging year?
Because of our pillars of support, namely the 3 tiers of government. ministries, departments and agencies,
corporate bodies and advertisers,
religious bodies,
civil society groups,
political parties, and most importantly, you, our esteemed viewers. Together, we made 2021 great.
And together, we shall make 2022 greater.
Thank you from all of us here at NTA. Your season's greetings and a prosperous new year.
Compliment of the season, we want to thank you for your consistent support and patronage. And to you who may not have been patronizing Made in Nigeria, we can start today by building a relationship with Erisco Foods, like our numerous partners and customers who believe in eating healthy food and in the economic progress of our country. So we enjoy you to buy Erisco tomato paste and our other Made in Nigerian products. Join the following people, institutions, and others in promoting the proudly Nigerian dream. President Muhammad Buhari, the First Lady Dr. Mrs. Aisha Muhammad Buhari, Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum, NTA, Anglican Diocese of Amish, Catholic Diocese of Onitsha, the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Winners Chapel, ShopRite,
Next Cash and Carry,
Spa Nigeria, Prince Ebano Supermarket, Buka Hut. What about you? When you buy a Erisco product, you are supporting us to create more jobs. Be part of us today. Thank you. God bless you.
Now, let's start off with the business news. OPEC affirms its determination to continue to work with participating countries with the Declaration of Cooperation Framework towards sustainable oil market stability.
Addressing OPEC and non-OPEC Declaration of Cooperation delegates at the 58th virtual meeting of the Joint Technical Committee, OPEC Secretary General Mohamed Barkindo reiterated the need to closely monitor the market and make necessary adjustments due to the evolving impacts of the Omicron variant and continued supply chain disruptions, as well as increasing inflationary pressures which could slow the growth momentum. On the latest outlook for the oil market, he explained that the global GDP growth forecast for 2021 has been revised down slightly to 5.5% from 5.6% in December 2021, while the 2022 growth forecast remains unchanged at 4.2%, indicating that the output will surpass $100 trillion in 2022.
For 2022, however, non-OPEC supply growth is forecast at a hefty 3 million barrels a day, or for an average of 66.7 MBD, also unchanged from last month. We continue to monitor the potential near-term impacts if some leading consuming countries carry through with their announced plans to release an estimated 7 million barrels from their strategic oil reserves.
The Joint Technical Committee pegged the world oil total demand in 2021 at 96.5 million barrels per day and at 100.6 million barrels per day in 2022, surpassing pre-pandemic levels, and equally announced their plans to release an estimated 70 million barrels from their strategic oil reserves.
We'd like to appreciate our correspondent on the business news. Let's move forward now, and up next will be our newspaper review in a moment.
Bayo Achebi is already in the house. Bayo, who didn't see since 2021.
Yes, it's already last year since we saw. Happy New Year. Yusuf.
Happy New Year, welcome.
Good morning, Claire. Happy New Year. Good morning, Nigeria. Yes.
We saw yesterday.
Yeah, you did, but
it's not a waste to wish you a happy 2022.
the New Year is already happy for all of us.
Good.
Maybe a much more financially
Happier.
Rewarding. You know what we discussed yesterday?
Financial.
Yes, we discussed, how to manage financial resources.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it was a beautiful conversation, and we learned a lot.
And that's key this year.
Yes, we learned a lot.
Yeah.
That's managing poverty.
Okay, now let's look at the papers and then see what we have there. And let's look at the Punch. From the top of the Punch newspaper, can we really have the Punch there? The Punch newspaper, at the top of it, we have on page 21, we have CBN, SEC, others to lift financial sector with fresh 1.54 trillion naira investment. And on page 17, Buhari, others mourn Tofa as MQ Abiola's presidential poll opponent dies at 74. The other story is Nigeria's debt vulnerable, costly, alerts World Bank, details on page 22. And then sustained bombings, force terrorists to surrender, ACF tells the military. Coming down, just on the side, we have customs, immigration, 13 others failed to remit 127 billion naira, says an audit report. You have details of that on page 22. And close by on page 2, we have why Jonathan must support Igbo presidency in 2023, says Ohaneze. The main story on the Punch here is the New Year celebrations. It says experts project high infection rate as Nigerians shun protocols at fun sports. Get details of that on page 2. But writers are uncontrolled crowds at beaches, others to fuel community transmission, expert warns. And then the second writer is recovery rate drops by 73.2%. NCDC distributes 400,000 COVID-19 testing kits. Moving down to the foot of the page, we have Lagos train service will begin this year, says Governor Sanwo-Olu. We get details of that on page 6. And on page 5, fire killed 182 Kano residents in 2021, says KSFS. And on page 8, Sanwo-Olu, Wiki others mourn Olubadan, hail monarch for contributions. Lalong demands punishment as 3 killed in Plateau ambush. You get details of that on page 8. At the bottom of the page, we have 3 stories, and these include PDP demands Mutawali's resignation over Zamfara kidnappings and killings. Details on page 9. And on page 4, family alleges kidnapping as Plateau bride disappears hours to wedding. That's serious. And on page 17, we have APC tackles Sheikh Hussaini over governorship bid, that is, and calls ex-senator idle blogger. Clear?
Yes, Nadabo, honestly, the item you read about uncontrolled, crowd at the beaches, and of course the drop in recovery rates of COVID patients is very, very worrisome. And I just like Bayo, just before I take the leadership, to just speak to it. It's very, very worrisome indeed.
About COVID-19?
Yes, about COVID-19.
Well, you see, this is what the Secretary General of the United Nations, in fact, it was the DG of the World Health Organization who said we should postpone celebrating now until later, or we'll pay a price of celebrating now and mourning. And that's apparently what is happening. The cases are going rapidly on the increase. In the FCT, the task force had to be put on alert to go around over the New Year, because over the Christmas period, the cases increased to about 830-something, and which was very, very rare in the Federal Capital Territory.
I was shocked even at the airport.
Yes.
At the airport over the weekend, I mean, you could barely count the number of people, wearing face masks and other non-pharmaceutical protective. I mean, you could count them, and you're wondering, and the crowd is so thick. You begin to wonder what is happening. People are not willing to put on their face mask or even keep social distancing and all that. And look at the recovery rate now. It's dropped by over 70%.
Yes. 73.2%. And it's really becoming worrisome by the day, given the fact that people always look at the Omicron variant as not really virulent as the other ones. And then people seem to feel as if it's normal, it's common flu, it's this and that, and people don't really take it so serious.
Yes.
Not knowing that by the time it hits on, it becomes really devastating.
And we are back to distributing test kits.
Yes, because Those are the measures that have been put in place to ensure that the rapid increase can be checked. In fact, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control indicated that there was about 176.9% increase in COVID-19 cases from the end of 2020 to the end of 2021.
Yes.
That shows you that the ascendancy is still going on very high, and something has to be done.
We do not have the details of the NCDC COVID-19 breakdown for today. I'm sure by the time we have it, we know
how it has.
Yes, how. But let me take a look at the leadership newspaper. It has quite a few stories on its front page, but I will start with the lead story. It says pressure mounts on APC leaders to shift national convention. Of course, this is on politics. Now, the writers there say postpone convention, ruin your legacy. That's the Progressive Governors Forum, DG, tells Buni, says APC playing into PDP's hands. The other rider is selfish personal interest must not override party's interest. That's attributed to Obahiabo. Now, the other story on the front page says Bashir Tofa, the June 12 actor and quintessential politician, bows out at 75. And President Muhammadu Buhari, governors and northern elders are also mourning his passing on. And the other newspaper we're looking at this morning will be the Daily Sun. Newspaper, again, number of stories on its front page. We'll begin with the lead story. And the lead story, of course, we'll be talking about fuel price hike, electoral bill, make Oma factors in 2022. Now they're projecting into the new year. The riders there, just one rider, party primaries, unstable economy, others of concern also. And just a little to the right, of the nameplate, you see Afe Babalola raises the alarm over cash crunch in banks. Afe Babalola is just a bit, the nameplate, if you just tilt down, Afe Babalola raises the alarm over cash crunch in banks. The details of that story you can find on page 19. And let's go below the nameplate, below the headline story. You'll find, of course, PwC warns of Nigeria's rising debt profile. Of course, 6.25 trillion naira deficit above FRA limit. The details of that on page 2. Of course, PwC, Pricewater. What's the other one, Bio? PwC, Price.
Water and Coopers.
And Water and Coopers. Thank you. Thank you. Now, other stories on that page. FG targets 95% digital literacy by 2030. It's on page 25. Electoral bill, Nigeria not ripe for direct primaries. IPAC on page 8. And 2023, IM briefs Southeast leaders, supporters on presidential ambition. Of course, this story is on page 26. Bayo, let's look at another story you want to review for us.
Yes, let's start with a story about late Bashir Uthman Tova, who, after being treated in a Kano hospital, gave up yesterday. He died at age 75. He's been described variously as a philanthropist, a businessman, and a politician. Of course, the President Muhammadu Buhari has sent a high-power delegation to go to Kano to commiserate with the family as well as the people of Kano State. Bashir Uthman Tofa came into political limelight as being elected councillor in 1976. He was a member of the Constituent Assembly in 1977 that fashioned out the 1979 Constitution. In the Second Republic, between 1979 and 83, he was secretary of the Kano branch of the National NPN, National Party of Nigeria, and later became its National Financial Secretary. He was a part of those who formed the Liberal Convention Party, which eventually did not secure registration. However, when the military self-styled president fashioned two political parties, he became a member of the National Republican Convention in 1990 and became its flag bearer in the 1993 presidential election that was annulled. Alhaji Bashir Tofa, incidentally, was at a youth forum just a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling the youths And he says that the future belongs to you, the youths, and you must rise up to the challenge of the present times. He urged the North to embrace brotherhood across the nation for all regions so as to maintain their revered status in the nation. And he said he and his age group are now at the point of exiting the world and meeting their creator. And people said that was almost a premonition, as if he knew what was coming.
Honestly, I was, chatting with someone yesterday about him, and someone said he was probably the first politician not to contest the result of an election.
Yes, he actually, at the heat of it, or he conceded defeat, and they hoped that would have doused the tension at that time. Unfortunately, we are all judges of what transpired in that historical moment. Yeah. But meanwhile, the Arewa Consultative Forum has urged the Nigerian military to sustain its current onslaught, particularly carried out by the various operations. Chief Audu Ogbe, who is the chairman of the Arewa Consultative Forum, says that the bombardment of bandits' hideout is yielding results. He was speaking at a Kaduna office and said that the recent end of Alhaji Auta and Kachala Luga, who are renowned bandits in Zamfara, portends that if the Nigerian military sustain their operation Hadarin Daji, which is carrying the onslaught to the bandits, there is hope that we will be able to surmount and overcome the criminality that is dominating in the northwest. He said the criminal kingpin, one criminal kingpin described as Bello Turiji, also has released 52 persons that were in his captive. This is said to be an outcome of negotiations between Zamfara state government and the kingpin. He said that the Turiji Bello is a kingpin who operates in Shinkafi area and has been a thorn in the flesh of people in Isa local government area. Meanwhile, in Imo State, the tactical team of the Imo Police Command foiled an attempted attack on the palace of Ezioha Ameifike in Imo. The palace of Dr. E.C. Okeke was intended to be attacked, but the Imo Police Command were able to gun down one of the attackers that is suspected to be a member of the separatist group and their Eastern Security Network military wing. That has ended that foray, and another attack on a palace has also been foiled. But meanwhile, the Auditor General of the Federation has raised alarm that about 178,459 rifles, arms, and ammunition are unaccounted for nationwide. He raised this in an audit query to the National Assembly, and he said that thousands of assorted arms and ammunition got missing from police armory in 2019. This is because there is no trace of the arms and there's no formal report about their whereabouts. The Auditor General specifically says that 88,078 AK-47 rifles, 3,907 assorted other rifles and pistols could not be accounted for different formations. So you see the sources of armament for all this criminality that's going on around?
Indeed, Bayo, and it's frightening, but there's not much we can say about that for now, because we've exhausted our time for newspaper review. But it's frightening. But Bayo, thank you as always, and have a good day. And please, just before we take our break, don't forget to wear your face mask, wash your hands with soap and water, sanitize, and of course, keep social distancing. COVID-19 is real and is still out there. Let's go for a short break.
Are you aware that your perfect family may be under threat by germs? Germs can cause infectious disease. These infectious diseases are amongst the biggest killers of adults and children. Illness-causing germs are everywhere. In unclean bathing water, clothes, dirty surfaces, on cuts and wounds. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capful. In your bathing water, for your laundry, for surface cleaning, for first aid, and to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure.
The Nigerian aviation sector is rapidly growing with the construction of new international airport terminals in several regions of the country. The new Murtala Mohammed International Airport has an estimated passenger increase of 30 million annually and 15 million for Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Malam Aminu Kano International Airport is also expected to open new frontiers for the region with more travel capacity for the annual Hajj, while the new Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, avails more business opportunities connecting the industrial cities in the region to the world. These new terminals beat world-class standards with enabling infrastructure that aid air travel, tourism, and the eventual growth of the country's GDP.
Open up commerce and, of course, link us to international societies.
People from international community will come here to do business, and then that will bring in more revenue to the state.
Now, distances can be seamlessly covered as Nigeria keeps raising its bar to suit global infrastructure standards.
We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations, we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all, to look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
It's Good Morning Nigeria. We're discussing this morning the justice sector in 2021. And like other sectors of the nation's economy, the justice sector plays a critical role in national development, especially in a democratic dispensation, hence the need to ensure the sanctity of the sector. Kene Ndilwe captures some of the thrilling moments in the sector in that gone year.
The world over, it is believed that judiciary is the last hope of the common man. This presupposes that its function is not to twist the truth or fabricate facts, but to interpret the law and ensure justice. It is often said that Nigeria is blessed with men and women of honor on the bench with landmark judgments replete with uncommon legal wisdom. However, a lot of factors have perennially served as clogs in the wheel of the justice sector in Nigeria, leading to loss of confidence in the courts. Many of these factors played out in the year 2021. Prominent among them was delay in dispensation of justice, usually attributed to the limited number of judges on the bench. The industrial action by members of the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, occasioned by their demands for financial autonomy of the judiciary, was another big blow on the judicial sector. Between April 6th and June 9th, the court's premises were under lock and key, denying Nigerians access to justice for more than 2 months. A situation that was also of major concern in 2021 was the incessant conflicting and contradictory orders and judgments, especially by courts of coordinate jurisdiction. The case of PDP leadership tussle and judgments on party primaries of Anambra 2021 governorship election were clear cases that brought embarrassments to the sector. However, it was not all knocks for the judicial sector, as some positives were also recorded, including judgments on some high-profile cases. Launching of the pilot project for the deployment and use of virtual court sitting facilities at Kuje Correctional Center, Abuja, was widely applauded by experts in the judicial system, as this is aimed at speedy determination of cases. On this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, experts will be speaking on ways to improve Nigeria's judicial sector in 2022.
Thank you very much, Ekene Ntalive. Now, we're very happy to welcome with us in our studio Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much.
And Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Nigerians.
All right. Our next guest is joining us from our Jos studios, and he is Dr. Garba Usman Tetengi, senior advocate of Nigeria, is a former vice president of the Nigeria Bar Association and former member of the National Judicial Council. We'd like to welcome you, senior advocate. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning to you.
All right, Nadabo.
And of course, joining us via Zoom from the United Kingdom is Mr. Jibrin Samuel Okutepa, that is Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Samuel Okutepa.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians, and let me apologize to the Honorable Attorney General and my learned brother Silk for my mode of dressing. You caught me unaware, and I have to join you and dress like this. Otherwise, the Honorable Attorney General is professionally dressed. Dr. Garba Tetengi is also professionally dressed. So let me not get accused of being unprofessional in my mode of dressing.
It's okay, Samuel Okutepa. I hope the minister heard you, and of course he had really gotten your message. Let's get started, Honorable Minister. I had not wanted to really start off on this note by asking you the assessment, but really, the year 2021 has come and gone with its, the goodies, the baddies, and the uglies, if you like, and everything has come, and it's no more now. We're now in 2022. We're doing this justice this morning, looking at 2021 and how it fared in your area. What would you say, really? What should be your assessment?
Well, in assessing the year 2021, with particular regard to the successes, challenges, and perhaps associated steps taken to address the identified challenges, if any, it was a year that I can characterize by way of summation that has been indeed very successful as far as the justice sector is concerned. How do I mean? The challenges were there, no doubt. But then the greatest success story associated with it is the fact that we have lived up to the expectations in terms of addressing the challenges as they arise. Let us take, for example, the major challenge associated with the COVID-19 affliction. It was indeed an international challenge that posed a great threat to the speedy dispensation of justice. So how do we now tackle and address the challenges associated with COVID-19 as far as justice sector reform, justice sector generally is concerned? We were confronted with a situation of a total and complete lockdown over a period of time. But then the Nigerian position arising from addressing the challenges was having in place an arrangement that allows for virtual court sittings. Without the intervention, without the COVID-19 posing a challenge on us, the idea of virtual court sitting arrangement couldn't have arisen. Again, arising from the challenge posed by COVID-19 affliction, we equally took a step further by way of having a virtual court sitting arrangement in our correctional centers formation. And this now added off to what we have succeeded in doing by way of administration of the Criminal Justice Act that brings about legislative framework for speedy dispensation of justice. So again, Arising from the security challenges, if you are looking at it from security challenges, we equally consider the need to use the judicial process to ensure the proscription of groups, associations, and individuals that have been posing terrorist threats onto the nation. And arising from that, as you rightly know, the federal government has procured certain military hardware equipments, inclusive of Tucano aircrafts for use in the, in the process of ensuring the security challenges being posed by bandits, cattle rustlers, terrorists, and associated unhealthy, challenging security issues. And but the condition associated with the procurement of some of these military hardware equipment is that they could only be used on terrorist organizations. So what do you have to do in the circumstances to operate within the bounds of the law was to ensure that those groups, associations that are posing security challenges, particularly armed with weapons, are indeed checkmated effectively, and we have succeeded in getting court orders that proscribe them and declare them terrorist organizations. So what I'm saying, in essence, whichever threat comes around, we look at it and then address it. If you are looking at our fight against corruption, for example, the challenges associated with it, which was legislative, we have succeeded in having in place legislative frameworks associated with having certain laws passed that could assist in the fight against corruption. And we have equally developed some of them that are waiting the passage by the National Assembly. Take, for example, the institutions. In institutional sense, we have all the institutions you require as far as the fight against corruption is concerned. You have the EFCC, you have the ICPC, you have the Code of Conduct Bureau, among others. In terms of policies as well, we have deployed all the necessary policies arising from the challenges that are now undermining our effective fight, our determination to effectively fight against corruption, and we have in place executive orders as tools that support what we are doing. We have in place pending legislation, proceeds of crime bill that is pending, witnesses protection bill that is pending, whistleblowers bill. So our approach is to look at a challenge and then come off with something that we feel is a solution to it. In the fight, in the area, for example, of the international recovery of looted assets, for example, Nigeria recently sponsored a bill, a resolution at the Conference of State Parties, which was targeted at enhancing the beneficial ownership identification, people behind the corrupt practices in the corporate bodies association. Who are those responsible? Who are those operating behind the corporate bodies that are involved in the looting of our assets? And Nigeria eventually succeeded in developing international support for a resolution that was recently passed at the Conference of State Parties in Egypt, in which the international community agreed with Nigeria that there is need for an international resolution that will lift the veil for the purpose of identifying those that are the sponsors of the illicit financing and associated things. So it is indeed a success story that is targeted as looking at the challenges, confronting them, and addressing them.
Okay, you've done well, Minister. You've talked about what you're doing in terms of addressing threats. You talked about institutions. You've talked about, of course, enhancing efficiency and all that. But let us also look at enforcement and implementation with regards to rule of law. Would you say your ministry did its best in 2021 to get government to comply?
Well, the simple and concise answer to the question as presented is the fact that Federal Ministry of Justice has a constitutional responsibility to ensure the sustenance and application and enforcement of rule of law in whatever the government do in terms of administration and the governance. And my clear answer to that is within the context of the law, in the sense of compliance with the court judgment and orders. The Federal Ministry of Justice and indeed the government of President Muhammadu Buhari had indeed been operating in compliance. But I think it is equally important to place on record that when you talk of a rule of law, it is about engagement within the limited confines of the law. It is not about a straight jacket compliance with the judgment and orders of the court, but whether within the context of judgment and orders as delivered by the court, you have exercised the right available at your instance within the context and instrumentality of the law. And that we have succeeded in doing wholeheartedly. When a judgment, for example, is delivered that you find objectionable, you have an option within the context of the rule of law of either appealing against the judgment or in the alternative, staying, filing an application for staying the execution of the judgment, or in the alternative where the law allows, file an application for setting aside the judgment. So it is not about hook, line, and sinker compliance with the judgment or orders of the court, but whether within the context of the law you have indeed taken benefit of the rights, privileges available at your instance within the context of the law. And my answer to that is that the Federal Ministry of Justice had indeed been wholeheartedly advising the government and indeed complying with the rule of law within the context of the rights and privileges available at its instance in respect of judgments and orders that are made by the court of law. So again, the background of operating within the confines of the law, within the confines of utilization of the rights and privileges available at the instance of the Federal Ministry of Justice and indeed the federal government, we have done very well in terms of ensuring that the game is played according to the rule.
And really, I must say congratulations therefore. But all the same, one would not really hesitate to further ask that there are so many cases pending in courts. The COVID-19 you mentioned was one other major setback in this regard that halted, the dispensation of justice speedily and fastly. And some other, reasons that, we know that have been hampering the speedy dispensation of justice in this country, which of course you wanted to address and started addressing by having the virtual, courts, especially the one inaugurated recently in Kuje. But all the same, the problem still lingers on. There are backlogs of cases and a lot more are there and a lot more are coming in. I don't know. What's your rating of the performance of the courts in this regard, given the 2021 performance of, the judiciary in this sector?
Well, I think the courts have been performing wonderfully well. And one good thing, as I earlier on stated, about the justice sector is its ability to be receptive to changes, the dynamics associated with the reality on the ground with particular regards to technological development and associated things. When we were faced with the problem of delays in the administration of justice, for example, it was commonly agreed within the justice sector, stakeholders and justice sector stakeholders to look at the challenge and see how best we can come out of it. That was what gave rise to Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which now makes it a condition for a substantial day in, day out proceedings associated with higher profile criminal cases.
Okay.
But one good thing you equally need to consider is the amendment associated with some other laws. For example, in respect of election petition matters, as we speak, there are still pending 2011 cases associated with free election matters. There are still some that are pending at the Supreme Court. So we equally consider that as a threat. And what do? By way of legislations, we now come together, working with the National Assembly, the legislature, working with the judiciary, and indeed the other justice sector stakeholders to look at the possibility of ensuring that cases are indeed concluded. Pre-election matters and election matters are concluded within regulated time. And that is a function of legislation. And we now came off with necessary amendment to existing laws, fading time within which such cases must be concluded. Now, again, the judiciary in its own right look at the possibilities of enhancing the speed associated with the administration of justice. And what was it that was done? The judiciary came off with a lot of practice directions that are intended and targeted at regulating time so as to bring about the desired speed in the determination of cases. In respect of election petition, for example, prompt loading, which is the idea of bringing whatever you have in documentary sense that you need to present by way of evidence for determination of the court, even ahead of the actual hearing of the cases, so that the parties could now have an opportunity of review, raising their objection, and then putting them across to the court for determination ahead of the main hearing, as against a tradition whereby tendering of a single document could take a month or two, and the parties arguing and ventilating, of course, arguing over admissibility or otherwise of such document. So it is indeed a collective action within the justice sector system by which the legislature, the judiciary, and indeed associated stakeholders come together with time reviewing things for the purpose of ensuring that challenges are being addressed as they arise. And that has indeed fared very well, taking into consideration what obtains now in terms of speed in the justice determination, and not only the speed, addressing whatever challenge, inclusive of the challenges associated with the COVID-19 affliction that had arisen, and then we keep looking at the problems and then taking immediate steps to address them.
Okay, let's, we have just a few minutes before we, escalate the conversation to other guests. But I think sometime last year, you were in New York, where you gave a public lecture, and the title of your lecture was Declining Corruption in Africa, the Muhammadu Buhari approach in Nigeria. Of course, which gives us a sense that corruption is declining. Is corruption really declining, or is it still a major issue in our country?
Well, declining is international major issue. Corruption is indeed an international major issue. So you cannot rule out that conclusion that it is indeed an international major issue. But the issue is whether the Nigerian model is indeed working in terms of addressing it locally and internationally. And my answer is yes. So what are the parameters that now are the basis for my conclusion that as far as the Nigerian model is concerned, that under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, the corruption is indeed declining? Let us now have a look at the international assessment of what we are doing. At the international level, it is common knowledge that President Muhammadu Buhari has been adjudged as the champion of anti-corruption by African Union. That, by international assessment, is a pass mark of what model President Muhammadu Buhari is adopting in the fight against corruption. And then that has
for the model.
For the model, and for the fact that we are indeed getting it right. And then if you look at the United Nations Office of Crimes and Drugs and Crimes, UNODC, assessment of the Nigerian situation arising from whether corruption is declining or not. By 2019 assessment, which was the most recent, among the about 17 items assessed within the context of Nigerian model, Nigeria was adjudged to have been experiencing a major decline in corruption index. As it relates to about 16 of the items. That by international assessment, if you are divorcing yourself of the local politics and looking at it from the international perspectives, is a clear establishment of pass mark indication.
Which of the international rating? Because I know that Transparency International Corruption Perception Index.
I am talking of the UNODC rating.
Okay.
And the rating of UNODC is sector by sector assessment.
Okay.
You assess the judiciary, you assess the police, you assess the associated public issues. Now, if you are coming back home in terms of prosecution, if what interests you is the number of convictions recorded over time, as at 2015, when we were just coming in newly as a government, the number of convictions recorded by EFCC were 103 convictions. But as I'm talking today, in 2021, we recorded about 2,000 convictions, one single agency. You can now multiply and get the percentage in terms of enhancement in convictions. And then if you are looking at it from the perspectives of having in place legislative framework that support what we are doing in the fight against corruption, we have been having laws. If you are talking of the institutional framework, for example, we have been amending our laws to suit the purpose, for the purpose of having the desired result. If you are talking of speed in terms of determination of high-profile cases, I have stated earlier, administration of criminal justice had indeed been been assented as a law, and that has greatly enhanced what we are doing.
It is enhancing what you're doing. The approach is working quite all right.
Enhancing
it's giving you
the
results.
speed.
It's
Yes.
giving you results.
Yes.
But has it been able to check that, penchant for corrupt practices?
It has, because the laws has been amended, has been passed, has been assented, are indeed impacting positively, both in preventive sense, by way of ensuring, for example, policies are put in place. If you talk of, for example, VVN, single treasury account, 90 associated instruments and executive orders that are put in place, particularly Executive Order number 6. They are all instruments that are not inherently preventive, but in terms of enforcement as well, provided the desired speed in the determination of high-profile cases. So if you are talking a legislative framework, we have succeeded in bringing about laws that are working. If you are talking of convictions, enforcements, we have succeeded in enhancing the level of convictions. If you are talking of higher profile cases, for example, you know of the number of governors that are serving prison terms associated with cases, on cases relating to corruption.
How many?
Well,
I don't have the number.
You are in the field. And we have to rely on you in the art of providing the necessary statistics as a journalist. So, but one thing I can tell you for sure, there are those that are serving the term, and you cannot dispute that aspect. And we have equally developed a means of tracking whatever can visibly be seen in terms of the resources of the government. For example, the ICPC has succeeded in bringing about what we call constituency project tracking system. So if a project is now in place, a constituency project, for example, we have devised a means that we keep tracking to ensure that it is indeed executed. So by and large, from whatever perspective you look at it, either from the perspective of lawmaking, from the perspective of prevention, from the perspective of enforcement, and from the perspective of recovery, and international perspectives of building international consensus for the purpose of ensuring that our model of anti-corruption fight succeed, I think we have done wonderfully well.
Okay, thank you so much. Honorable Minister, the background has so much been laid, and of course we can now escalate the conversation to, other guests we have. In our Just studio, we have Dr. Garbadin Usman Tetengi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, a former Vice President of Nigerian Bar Association and former member of National Judicial Council. 2021, the judicial sector. What's your take?
Well, the Attorney General, who is the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, has given his own perspective to a very large extent. I think from my little knowledge of 2021 justice sector, I think he has addressed the concern. With regards to the COVID-19, which is an international phenomenon, there is no doubt that it has slowed down the pace of justice delivery in Nigeria. But with the introduction of that virtual concept, to a certain extent, the problem was addressed to a very certain extent, not necessarily large extent, because I think what was addressed was more or less at a federal level, not at the state. So there has been quite considerable progress, let me say, with regards to the justice sector in 2021, having regards, of course, to the COVID-19, which is an international phenomenon and has really posed a serious challenge to us. I agree with that, no doubt about that. And with regards to the fight against corruption and other financial crimes, which are before the various courts of the Federation, and the Administration of Justice Act legislatively has said it, and I agree with him too. They have tried to fight corruption and financial crimes through legislative action, no doubt. As to the efficacy of that itself in the court, is to a certain extent, not to a large extent, has been quite successful. I recall also that the judiciary, or let me say the legal profession, knowing very well that fighting corruption is at the heart of this administration. I recall that the past Chief Justice of Nigeria constituted a committee to aid in the trial of financial and corruption cases. To that extent, the composition was that of the bar and the bench. The past presidents of the bar were members, and I was a member at that time as well as certain judges were also made members, and we had been fighting. That's the committee they used to call Trumco. It is still in existence, only that they have brought down the number from 18 now to 10, I think because of lack of funds in order to carry out their function effectively, because the function is not just in paper, but also going around some of the jurisdictions, because to look at the cases that have been handled, and at times on-spot assessment of the trial of such cases. I know that we have the southern zone, which consists of all the south, southwest, and southeast. We have the northern zone, which consists of the 19 northern states, and then we have that of Abuja specifically. And we're divided. Some of the members were divided, and we tried our best to try and monitor some of these trials. We had cause to sit with some of the judges at the Court of Appeal and at the Federal High Court, and to discuss one-on-one as to how effectively, or where we had problems, or where they had problems. And we're also thinking of meeting with some of these agencies, especially the EFCC. But I think there was this lack of funds, and therefore our our work was to a large extent curtailed. But the Supreme Court is still in existence. Like I said, it has been reconstituted by this present Chief Justice of Nigeria, and we now have about 10 members. We are still working and hope to work in 2022 to a very large extent. I think to that extent, I think the judiciary too, as well as the legal profession, let's say generally, has been supportive of the fight against corruption and financial crimes. And well, I think that's as far as I can go. Some of these issues are just things that they are just matters that are within the exclusive knowledge of the Attorney General, and he has been able to state so. And on my own part, I think what I know is that there has been quite considerable progress with regards to the reforms in the justice sector in 2021, having regards, of course, to the challenges posed by the COVID-19, which I earlier said was an international phenomenon. I think we can give him pass mark to the
All right, thank you. You just took the word out of my mouth, Dr. Garba Usman Tetenge. Thank you. Let's bring in Jibril Samuel Ukutepa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, into our conversation now. Listening to the Honorable Minister of Justice, read out the achievements, the initiatives, of course, and the activities that the ministry have undertaken in 2021 to enhance justice delivery. One will not hesitate to really give the ministry a big round of applause. But being a people's person, we are in the midst of the community. We hear and we listen to people and we read. There seemed to be a far more outcry against some of the activities or decisions or advice coming from the ministry, especially in the area of enforcement of rule of law. I don't know, what's your perspective? How do you see it? Or from what prism do you look at the ministry in 2021?
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure you are hearing me.
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation is the civil law officer. And so when he speaks, one expects that what he says is correct. But because we practice a democratic system of government, and the people, the end users of justice, also have a voice in saying what they perceive to be, I think that to the extent I may agree with him, but looking at the justice sectors in Nigeria, the activities is not restricted to the Ministry of Justice alone. You have the police, you have the DSS, you have the civil defense, you have other people who are concerned with the with justice sectors in Nigeria. Let me talk about the COVID issues that we have spoken about. Given the kind of environment we have, I think that the COVID-19 has dealt a fatal blow to justice delivery system in 2021, notwithstanding the ad hoc arrangement that was put in place. Number one, the COVID pandemic came unannounced, and in some states, for instance, the virtual court proceedings were resisted because our constitution appears not to envisage it. You may recall that the Lagos State government approached the Supreme Court for a determination whether or not virtual court proceedings is constitutional. Although the Supreme Court declined to hear that matter, one expected that would have been a policy decisions that would have guided the use of virtual court proceedings in Nigeria. And so to that extent, some Nigerians and a larger extent, a larger portion of Nigerians were disappointed that the Supreme Court declined to make a pronouncement on the matter. Now, let's even look at the virtual court proceedings from the point of view of infrastructural development. You will recall that to do virtual court proceedings, you need internet, you need electricity, and you need good technological development. And I can tell you that the virtual court proceedings only was succeeding in cities where internet facilities were operating in epileptic form, not in the high speed that you expected of it from advanced country. For me, our infrastructural developments have seriously impeded the kind of justice delivery system we have witnessed using the COVID-19 pandemic as example. 2021, with respect, notwithstanding the struggle by legal practitioners and judicial officers, to me, witness a very poor justice delivery output, because Nigeria didn't get the right to access court. There were total lockdown across the board. And then our courts, if truth be told, our court system in Nigeria, with respect, is still operating within the parameter of maybe 17th century, because our judges have no good equipment to work. You may recall that the Honorable President of the Court of Appeal made a complaint about the poor remuneration of our judicial officers. So I think there is a need for the federal government of Nigeria to look at the condition of service of our judicial officers, the way where they live, the court they operate from, their facilities available to them. Nigeria is about the only country I know that our judges are still taking down notes in longhand. And when you are looking for proceedings, just like in the National Assembly, the National Assembly will conduct proceedings today, and in the next 2 hours or so, the answers are available. You can't get court proceedings and court rulings that immediately in Nigeria, not for the fault of their lordships, but because the facilities to produce that at the speed of lightning are not there. The conditions they work are excruciating. They are very, very hostile to the quality delivery judgment that we need from our courts. The level of jurisprudence, with greatest respect, appears to be dwindling in terms of logical analysis, considering the volume of work. And then Nigerians are also worried that you may have read Simon Kola-Ole. Nigerians are worried that government appears to give more attention to political justice than other sectors of our country. Some of human rights cases, like I said, the Attorney General of the Federation only has a Minister of Justice. But the police, who are supposed to show fidelity to court orders, appears in most cases to foot dragging when court orders are served on them. And when there's total disobedience to court order, then the justice sector of this economy will be facing a serious shipwreck, and the economy itself will go down the drain, and people will not come to such country to invest. So to a large extent, speaking for myself, while there is these government efforts to see that justice sector is improved, our attitude, both that of the lawyers, that of the other end users of courts, seems not to encourage that desired goal. And for me, our police institutions and other security operatives appear to be law unto themselves when it comes to obeying court orders. And we still face these problems of government deciding which court order to obey and which court order not to obey. So I will, with respect, not give that pass mark the way and manner it was generously donated, because Nigerians are watching us, and Nigeria expect us to speak to them that we have challenges, and these challenges are inherent in us. Nigeria seems to, even within the legal profession, we don't seem to agree to there is a boundary that we must not cross. We don't seem to agree. Everything is debatable in Nigeria. Everything is arguable in Nigeria. Everybody seems to become lawyers, and everybody don't seems to take a certain position as being in the national interest. And so until we agree that national interest is paramount to individual interests in government or in private sectors, we will still have a diminishing return in our justice delivery system. So for me, 2021 posed a very hazardous, slow pace of justice delivery system as a result of combinations of circumstances beyond our control, and which circumstances became far beyond our control because of our lack of technological development and our attitudes. Maybe as we go further, I may say more than this. Let me stop at here.
Thank you so much, Jibril Samuel. It's a pleasure. We thank you for that, explanation. Mr. Minister, let's look at these issues raised. Talking about, dispensation of justice, talking about infrastructure, talking about the delays caused by, so many factors and reasons. Earlier you started by talking about the COVID-19. And when you add that to the Jusen strike, it's another negative still, a downturn. And truly speaking, a lot of cases, as we said, are still pending. And the infrastructure is not there in order to have the virtual court, in place so much being all over the country. Now, how do you look at this issue of speedy dispensation of justice in 2022, an improvement in what we have in 2021, when in cases like the Jusen strike hasn't been really resolved, talking about the Executive Order 10, where the governors are still dragging their feet and things like that. What's the approach?
You see, it is certainly admitted that there are challenges. But then, as I stated, what we have succeeded in doing over time is to look at the challenges, confront them, overcome them by way of bringing about the desired and necessary solutions to the problems. When you talk of the autonomy of the judiciary with particular regards to the issue of funding, the first step we have taken was that of constitutional amendment to Section 123 of the Constitution, 121 to Section 3 of the Constitution, by way of ensuring that the financial autonomy of the judiciary and the state legislature is indeed constitutionally guaranteed. That, as a government, we have done. But then, along the line, we were equally faced with the problem of implementation of the autonomy as enshrined in the Constitution, not at the federal level, but at the state level. And then with that challenge being posed on us, we now came up with Executive Order number 10 that is intended, desired, and meant to enforce the autonomy of the state judiciary and legislature as established by the Constitution. So what I'm saying in essence is, granted there are challenges, but then what have we done? We have taken effective legislative steps, among others, inclusive of constitutional amendment and the associated executive tools, which are the executive orders, to ensure that autonomy is in place. So, by and large, we are making progress as far as the challenges associated with the autonomy and financial independence of the judiciary is concerned, which is intended and targeted at making them more transparent, more independent, both in financial sense and otherwise. But then there are challenges, no doubt, and those challenges are what have given rise to Jusun strike and associated things, and that is the implementation at the state level and not at the federal level.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you have a problem and then you have taken a step in the direction of ensuring that it is addressed, you are entitled to fast mark. The idea of execution is a component of addressing a problem. You have taken the legislative steps, you have taken executive steps, and then it is now the materialization of the enforcement of the legislative framework which is already in place.
The fear here is, Honorable Minister, the fear here in case, God forbid, Jusun comes back on strike. Still, the articles of the Memorandum of Understanding and Agreement with the states have not been met and not implemented. And they seem to maybe brush it over and then come back. What happens?
Well, you see, Jusun as an institution or perhaps as an association is a component of judiciary.
Yeah.
And it is an issue that ordinarily ought to have been addressed by the judiciary, but then it has a kind of a further effect on the executive. But at the executive at which level? At the state level. But notwithstanding, realizing this problem, the federal government had come in to midwife an understanding that will ensure the implementation of the autonomy as statutorily and constitutionally established. So we have indeed achieved some level of success of having in place the law, and then we have achieved further success by bringing parties together. It was on account of the intervention of the federal government that Jusun at a point withdrew their strike action. And we have been working ever since for the purpose of ensuring the implementation of the law, which constituted the crux of the problem that has beset that had indeed generated the controversy between Jusun and indeed the state governments arising from the implementation of Executive Order Number 10.
Exactly. I was going to ask, because the necessity of that executive order was to give force to the provisions already contained in the Constitution with regards to fairness, financial autonomy and all that. But the state governors as well contested that executive order number 10. So as it is now, what is the status of that executive order?
Well, the status is parties are engaging. Nobody is contesting the need for the autonomy. Nobody is contesting the fact that it is a constitutional issue. But the modus operandi of the application and implementation of Order 10 is what the governors have been contesting. And as stated earlier, the federal government had put in place a committee, a tripartite committee involving the governors, the federal government, and indeed Jusun and Judiciary indeed, for the purpose of ensuring at the end of the day that we arrive at an understanding that will see to the implementation of Executive Order Number 10. So it is a work in progress. So the challenges have been identified, measures are taken to address the challenges, and then parties are engaging. So it is indeed work in progress. The idea of enforcement, application, and the operation of Executive Order Number 10 is a work in progress against the background of the engagement of the governors, the judiciary, and indeed the federal government.
Is there likely to be a conclusion to these matters so that concerns raised by Nadabu about maybe future strikes and all that disruption of the justice sector may not arise?
Well, the possibility, you can't rule out the possibility, because when parties are engaging, then certainly the targeted kind of end result is the possibility of arriving at a solution. So I'm very optimistic that nobody is, against the background of the fact that nobody is contesting the autonomy, it is only logical that the mode of its application must be agreed upon, arising from Executive Order number 10.
All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, we have other aspects, of course, that we have not touched. We intend to quickly do that, especially recovery of roots. I know you want to hear about that. And, of course, the declaration of bandits as terrorists. We'll be right back.
Are you aware that your perfect family may be under threat by germs? Germs can cause infectious disease. These infectious diseases are amongst the biggest killers of adults and children. Illness-causing germs are everywhere. In unclean bathing water, clothes, dirty surfaces, on cuts and wounds. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capful. In your bathing water, for your laundry, for surface cleaning, for first aid, and to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure.
Finally, the hero of Nigeria's democracy has arrived. He shall usher us into a new phase of development, peace, and prosperity. He is the father of the new Nigeria, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Welcome to another season of giving Nigerians hope yet again. We are sure of a great future for both ourselves and generations yet unborn. We look forward to your leading us as a nation into our manifest destiny. Though the challenges against us as a people are many, we know that your leadership shall set us on the right path to our greatness. A new dawn beckons on us all, and having you as our president is a precursor to this. Thank you for believing in Nigeria. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Since coming into office in 2015, the Buhari administration has recorded unprecedented achievements in all sectors, especially in the provision of infrastructure, which is the key to economic growth. Never in the history of this country has any administration done so much with so little. I recall that when this administration came into office, the price of crude oil, which provides for 80% of Nigeria's budgetary revenues and 95% of foreign exchange earning, dropped drastically, thus reducing the amount of resources available to the federal government. In spite of this, the administration has continued apace with massive infrastructure developments.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcome back. We're tweeting this morning on Good Morning Nigeria, the justice sector in 2021, an overview, and then looking ahead into 2022. We have the Honorable Minister right here and some two other senior advocates of Nigeria, talking about Dr. Garba Usman Tetengi and then Mr. Jibril Samuel Okutepa. Honorable Minister, let's turn back to you a little bit and then see what justice we can make to this issue of the declaration of terrorists, of bandits rather as terrorists, and of course, why that in the first place, and how so far in trying to achieve or rather get some, good security in this country.
Well, as far as terrorism is concerned, I think it is an issue that poses a major and national challenge to the well-being of the nation. Nigerians, over 200 million of them, are entitled to live in peace, to coexist in harmony, and live a life that is free of security challenges. The major problem associated with the Nigerian state is not only the security challenge, but then using the weapons to attack Nigerians and attack its corporate existence. And you will agree with me that one of the cardinal principles of governance is protection to lives, properties, and territorial existence of a nation. Now here we are confronted as at the time this government came into office with a challenge associated with Boko Haram. And the Boko Haram were, as at then, posing a daily, day in, day out threat, inclusive of bombings, inclusive of killings, which had indeed become at a point part of our national life. Today, a bomb attack at a market, tomorrow in the church, next tomorrow at the mosque. So the government has a responsibility to act. But then within the context of acting, you are equally expected to operate within the confines of international best practices associated with engagement. And one of such best practices is that you can only use maximum force on groups, individuals, and associations that are declared terrorists. And that is where the application of Terrorism Act comes into place. So with that in mind, Nigeria acted first, as you can rightly remember, by proscribing IFOF, taking into consideration the threats to lives and properties they have posed on the nation. Boko Haram were proscribed, IMN were proscribed. And then, arising therefrom, when we are now seeing some good results arising from the confrontations with the Boko Haram, taking into consideration they have now resorted to pocket of attacks. I am sure for quite a longer period of time we have not heard of bomb attacks that were at a point much more of an order of a day. Now we are equally confronted with a further threat in the northwest, for example, associated with banditry, kidnapping, cattle rustling. And in all this, these people, the bandits, the cattle rustlers, and indeed the kidnappers, are using weapons to attack Nigerians, abduct them, kidnap them, and indeed created a situation of serious security challenge and fear in the system. And then here we are equally confronted, arising from our international engagement in the Committee of Nations, that we are equally expected to operate in the best practices associated with the international engagement. We acquired military hardwares that are to be used for the purpose of suppressing the terrorism and associated terrorist attacks in the nation. But then in whatever military hardware you acquire, there are limits within the context of the international convention as to how it should be used, when it can be used, and against whom it can be used. And the operative word arising from such acquisitions of the major military hardwares is that it could only be used against terrorists. And that is how the idea of looking at the activities of the bandits, cattle rustlers, kidnappers, come into being. And our assessment taking into consideration of the fact that they are posing a major threat to the territorial peaceful coexistence, causing a major threat to lives and properties armed with weapons. The idea now came about that they have indeed satisfied the criteria of being declared terrorists within the context of the law, so that whatever military hardware is there at the disposal of the federal government can best be used against them within the context of the international convention, within the context of the law, and within the context of the international best practices.
Okay, and that gave us the platform to procure the Tucano fighter jets. Now we understand that the Tucano fighter jets, or the use of it, has not been gazetted. Why has it not been gazetted? There are allegations that federal government is foot dragging in, utilizing the weapons.
No. The gazetting of a court order or a court judgment is a process. But what matters fundamentally within the context of the international convention is indeed the judicial declaration. And that has been obtained. The court has declared the bandits, the kidnappers, cattle rustlers as terrorists. So with or without the Gazette, what give effect to such declaration is a judicial pronouncement. But the Gazette is a mere formality, and it has been indeed, it has been on, and I believe within a matter of days it will be concluded.
Is the Tucano fighter jet in use now?
Well, the idea of use or otherwise, I'm not in a position to say it is indeed exclusively a security and indeed military matter, in respect of which I have not been formally briefed for me to address the nation on.
But there is clearance.
One thing I can tell you is the international conventional demands associated with the usage of Super Tucano has been obtained, which is a judicial pronouncement and declaration of bandits, cattle rustlers, and indeed kidnappers as terrorists. And that has been procured, and the way has now been cleared for the application, deployment, and usage of Super Tucano. Whether they have been put to use or they are not, I'm not in a position to say.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Let's cross over to Jos and meet Dr. Garba Osman Tetenge. And then looking ahead, looking at 2022, and then vis-a-vis what happened in 2021. Let's look back a little bit and then look ahead. We witnessed conflicting court orders and other, forum shopping, especially in political matters in 2021. There's no doubt about that. Now the nation has 2 off-cycle governorship elections to be conducted, and coupled with the electioneering programs ahead of 2023 general elections. Dr. Garba, how would the key players address the issue now to protect our democracy in this regard, given what is ahead of us and what really happened in the past?
Thank you very much. Well, going forward, I think the essential key player here will be the judiciary, the court system itself. As far as the politicians are concerned, you may not be able to advise them appropriately, but the court itself should be wary of such political actions, and they should stand their feet and ensure that they do their work judiciously and judicially. I think that is the most important thing. The reason is there was a cause for the intervention of the National Judicial Council by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, I think, in respect of some conflicting judgments by some of the federal high courts. Truly speaking, that is quite embarrassing to the legal profession as a whole and to the court system. And I think the National Judicial Council, as well as the Chief Justice of Nigeria, should stand their feet and ensure that whoever violates or tries to compromise the court system, they should take, the disciplinary measures as outlined by the National Judicial Council should be taken into serious consideration in meting out sanctions against those judges. I think that is the way forward to ensure that 2022 will live up to expectations of Nigerians, since there's the political space is now open. I think that is my advice to the judiciary. That is all I can say as far as I'm concerned. With regards to all these cases that will be coming up, of course, these are political times, we know, and therefore if the judiciary is not able to stamp its feet, it will be ridiculed, publicly ridiculed, and I think that is to the detriment of the judiciary as a whole and the legal profession in general. Thank you.
Dr. Tenge, thank you. I would like to come back here to the studio before we go to Zoom. Honorable Minister, just quickly, before we bring in our guests on Zoom, some time ago, some group of leaders from the Southeast, known as the Igbo Great, made a plea on Mr. President on the release of the leader of the proscribed IPOB. And as the chief law, enforcer, and of course the advisor, to the president's decision is probably, based on your advice. Also, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, of which the president has denied assent to. We would like to hear your view on these two issues, because the public, has been reacting to the, issues.
Okay, perhaps maybe by way of general statement relating to the two issues that are presented, the issue relating to electoral bill and indeed the issue relating to KANU and by extension IPOP. One thing I can tell you for certain, the decision of the president as far as the governance and administration of this nation is concerned is based fundamentally and at all times on public interest consideration. So now coming down to the issue of the electoral bill, in respect of which Mr. President denied assent, the question is, what is the public interest consideration associated with his decision relating to the denial of the assent? When you talk of a law and its application in Nigeria, it is an application of the law on 200 million Nigerians. That is a starting point. And when I talk of public interest that govern and indeed that constitute the basis of the decision of the president, is the consideration of the 200 million and above Nigerians in existence. So it is with that consideration that you have to consider the electoral bill. If my figures are right, for example, APC, All Progressive Congress, which is the major political party and indeed the ruling political party in Nigeria, claim to have membership of around 14 million members. And that by extension means other political parties may not be as much in terms of membership. So perhaps maybe by general assessment, you may conclude that maybe we may have 40 million members of political parties. And by implication, about 60 million, about 160 million Nigerians are not necessarily members of a political party. So if a law is presented for consideration of the president, is it fair for the president to consider the law, both in terms of application and enforcement, from the perspective of the limited 40 million members of a political party, as against the 160 million Nigerians that are not? In other words, the president is to consider the 200 million. He cannot take a decision that do not factor the interest of the 160 million Nigerians that are not members of a political party. So what is the implication of that? You have to consider the available resources. If the limited 40 million Nigerians are looking for a resources of around 350 million, with 50 billion naira to conduct the party primaries relating to their political engagement, the other competing 160 millions are looking at the 350 billion for the purpose of infrastructure.
We are running out of time. You're going to have to conclude your thoughts.
Yes, 350 billion for the purpose of infrastructure, security, health, education. So the implication is in the art of governance, what I have come to learn of the mind and attitude of President Muhammadu Buhari is to consider the 200 million as against the limited 40 million members of the political party. And that was what informed the decision of the president. So by extension to the issue of Kanu, what will as well govern the decision of the president in terms of whatever request is presented in the public interest as against limited sectional interest of it.
Thank you.
Well, looking ahead to 2022 and what really the reforms are, and then we're trying to see how much we can be able to improve on the judicial sector in this country. So let's hear from you, Mr. Jibril Samuel Okutepa. What exactly would be your thoughts on the prospect of 2022, talking about the justice system in this country?
Well, thank you. Speaking for myself, judiciary does not operate in isolation. I think the Nigerian public and Nigeria as a whole will need to pay fidelity and obedience to our constitution. Drawing from what you spoke about Jusun's strike, for instance, there wouldn't have been any need for any strike if all our governors and public officials respect the oath of office they took to defend and protect Nigerian constitution. Judicial autonomy is already in the constitution, and nobody is ready to pay fidelity to that autonomy in the constitution. So it is our propensity to disobey law and order that is landing us where we are. So looking forward, therefore, to 2022 and even beyond, I think the judiciary need to redeem itself from the grip of the people who don't want them to be independent. And that is the other arms of government. We must call a spade a spade. The judiciary is starved. They need to release money to the judiciary. They need to leave the judiciary to function maximally. Because if there are no interferences from the political class, I think Nigeria has one of the best judicial system in the world. Allow the judges to work. Stop hobnobbing with them. And I will advise the judges also to know that as chief priests, they must avoid doing anything that will contaminate the stream of justice. The legal profession must also be ready to discipline its own members, because judges don't get themselves contaminated without the connivance and support of other persons in the society. So it takes two to tango. And I will advise the members of the legal profession to first and foremost pay obedience to our duty, which is to defend and protect the interests of justice and the cause of justice at all times. Until we do so, and we stop maneuvering our ways and encouraging political rascality, we will just continue to talk and be talking and talking the way we are talking. I finally advise the judiciary not to pretend not to know that in our electoral contest in Nigeria, the democratic principles that the will of the people is sacrosanct, must be protected and respected. And therefore, they must avoid developing any principle of law that will put a will in the progress of electoral jurisprudence. Let's go into full decision devoid of technicalities. All this theory that you must call polling unit agent by agent and all of those demonstration of document and all of those, they must take a look at it, because it's constituting more injustice in our democracy than hitherto. And so I will advise the judiciary to be far above board, like Caesar's wife, in 2022 and beyond.
Thank you very much, Jibril Samuel Okutepa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. We appreciate you. Just the last 30 seconds word from the Minister. You talked about efforts to identify corporate bodies behind loots in this country. What has been the effort? Has it been... talk to us about the outcomes shortly in 30 seconds.
Well, locally and internationally, we have developed a strategy of developing international support for what we are doing both in terms of identifying those that are responsible behind looting our national assets, and that is the beneficial register approach to it. And in so doing, of recent, there was the Conference of State Parties that has taken place in Egypt. And Nigeria has put across a resolution of enhancing the beneficial ownership identity, recovery, and indeed repatriation. And that resolution was adopted at the conference. And then we have countries, inclusive of Pakistan, Palestine, Peru, Saudi Arabia, Colombia, Burkina Faso, Dominican Republic, among others, inclusive of the United States, that supported the resolution. So we are taking the fight to the international level as far as recovery is concerned, inclusive of what we are doing locally.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. It's our pleasure to be part of this program this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Garba Usman Tetenge, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, former Vice President of the Nigerian Bar Association, and former member of the National Judicial Council, we thank you so much for your insights this morning. A very big thank you also to Mr. Jibril Samuel Okutepa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who spoke to us from the United Kingdom. It's our pleasure. We hope to meet you again sometime in the air. Thank you so much. And of course, that's Good Morning Nigeria. But before we round up, let's look at the world of sports.
The Super Eagles of Nigeria continue to intensify preparations for the Africa Cup of Nations under interim boss Austin Eguavoen at the Moshood Abiola Stadium. The Eagles, who was at the time of this report were 14 in number who had arrived camp, had an open training session in the presence of pressmen and supporters. Notable among them were skipper Ahmed Musa, Maduka Okoye, Moses Simon, and newbies Union Berlin talisman Taiwo Awuni and CSK Moscow forward Chidera Ejuke, who expressed candid optimism in Nigeria clinching the title in Cameroon.
Yeah, I think it's important how you enter the tournament. If you enter the tournament with a very good game, yeah, then they already know about you. So I think the first game is going to be very important, and after that it's just doing my thing and yeah, being on my best.
For me, I'm really proud of myself, to be honest, because it shows your patience, your hard work is coming into play, and I think which is one of the key for every player, and I think I'm really glad and happy about that.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Football Federation NFF says it is putting all necessary measures in place to ensure a good outing for the Nigerian representatives in Cameroon.
Coaches have their technique and tactics, and before the competition they would want to perfect whatever plans they have. It is only after perfecting the plan they have, they now would want to play a friendly match to test the workability of what they have. If they have not finished that, they would rather want to concentrate on planning their technique and tactics before they think of playing friendly match. So everything depends on what the coach wants and what they think is workable.
All right, we wish the Superior Girls good outing when the tournament starts on the 9th of this month. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Again, we ask you to join us tomorrow and always be with us in our fight against rape and rapists. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. Bye-bye.
And I'm Yusuf Nadabu Usman. Do have a great day.
NTA, you can't beat the reach.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Welcome to the world's first football scouting reality show, Football Dreams. We kicked off an extensive scouting selection for football talents in 2019. And together with our African Football Network, we've evaluated over 3,000 players from 13 countries. They all share the same dream, that one day they will become a professional football player. Only 28 players made it to fight for a contract with a professional European team in the grand finale of Football Dreams 2021 in Benin. Our main host and former professional footballer, England national player, and FA Cup winner John Fashanu will guide us through the show and push the players through extremely hard and challenging tests. We've also invited a group of famous coaches, agents, and managers to watch and analyze every step the players take. Halfway to the final, 14 of the 28 players will be eliminated, but only one player will win the professional contract.
Football Dreams are going to take on the best of the best, and I assure you they want to prove it. One of the hardest training sessions that you can have as a would-be professional footballer. All the